literally no offense to anything. They're very proud to cast a Latino actress as Snow White. It makes no sense to me. You're progressive in one way, but you're still making that backward story of 7 dwarves living in a cave. What the are you doing, man?
So Disney remade Snow White and somehow managed to start a war between Rachel Zegler, Peter Dinklage, and literally the entire internet. And yeah, one of them might be blaming the other for nuking the whole thing. So let's unpack this magical mess. Let's start with the casting choice that made Disney fans everywhere collectively clutch their mouse ears. Rachel Zegler, a proud Latina, was cast as Snow White, and the internet, being the calm, rational place that it is, totally lost its mind. Some folks were thrilled. Others acted like Walt Disney himself, rose from the grave just to smack them with the original animation cell and whisper, "She's supposed to be pale, sweetheart." Ziegler, to her credit, handled it with class. She said Snow White is beloved in Latin America, and she was honored to play the role. Sounds reasonable, right? Well, not if you're someone who thinks authenticity means finding an actual 14th century German girl with skin whiter than printer paper. People forgot this is a movie about a magic mirror and a talking forest, but yeah, let's draw the line at ethnic ambiguity. But just as things were starting to simmer down, Peter Dinklage decided to throw gasoline on the apple pie. Now here's where the cauldron really started to bubble. Peter Dinklage, yes, that Peter Dinklage, Emmy winner, Game of Thrones icon, an unofficial spokesperson for calling out Hollywood's BS, decided he had a bone to pick with Disney's shiny new take on Snow White. In an interview, Dinklage basically said, "Great, you cast a Latina Snow White, but you're still making a movie about 7 dwarfs living in a cave? That's not progress. That's a fairy tale fever dream from 1845. And honestly, the man had a point, except the internet doesn't do nuance. It does pitchforks and hashtags. Some applauded him for using his platform to call out tired stereotypes. Others accused him of single-handedly canceling dwarf roles, like he had personally gone down to Central Casting and shouted, "Nobody works until I say so." Little people actors came out of the woodwork like, "Hey Peter, we still like working, you know?" Disney, now caught in the most awkward PR sandwich ever, hit the panic button. Executives started scrambling like dopey after a double espresso, releasing vague statements about rethinking the depiction of magical creatures and promising a new, respectful approach. Translation: we have no idea what we're doing, but please stop yelling at us online. And just like that, the script was getting rewritten faster than Snow White steps into the forest. The dwarfs were now some sort of weird, diverse band of forest-dwelling magical beings, basically a fantasy TED Talk lineup. They kept one actual dwarf character in there, which somehow made it worse. Like, if you're gonna erase the group, don't leave a single token dude holding the shovel. This wasn't a reimagining anymore. It was a full-blown identity crisis. And we hadn't even made it to the test screenings yet. So after Dinklage lit the match, Disney basically looked at their script and said, "Cool, what if we just shredded it?" Suddenly, Snow White wasn't just a remake. It was a panic attack with a $250 million budget. Writers were rewriting rewrites. Producers were spinning in chairs. Somewhere, someone was definitely crying in a Pixar mug. And poor Rachel Zegler, she's standing in the middle of this creative tornado, trying to act through a script that changed more times than Prince Charming's Tinder profile. One minute, she's singing to woodland creatures. Next minute, she's girl-bossing through vague feminist monologues. Then suddenly, bam, a scene about social justice mushrooms or something. Even the dwarves turned mystical forest entities didn't know what genre they were in anymore. Then came the test screenings. And oh boy, did they go well. If your definition of well is audiences leaving with visible confusion and secondhand embarrassment. Early reports said viewers found the tone all over the place, which is code for, this movie has no idea what it wants to be, and neither do we. There were scenes that felt like a nostalgic Disney throwback, and then others that played like a rejected CW pilot. One moment it's whimsy, next moment it's a TED Talk about breaking glass ceilings. And the audience was like, cool, but can someone just eat a poison apple already? Word leaked that Disney was desperately re-editing, reshooting, and rebranding faster than you could say fairy tale fiasco. Internally, some wanted to go traditional. Others were pushing hard for more modern messages. And the result? a Frankenfilm stitched together by anxiety and executive notes. And through it all, the whispers got louder. Whispers that maybe, just maybe, this entire avalanche of problems started with one man, one comment, and one very loud opinion. Now, somewhere in the middle of this cinematic train wreck, a juicy little rumor slithered out of the Hollywood gossip machine. Rachel Zegler was allegedly not thrilled with how things went down, and she might be pointing the finger squarely at Peter Dinklage. Yeah. Apparently, the story goes that after watching the entire production collapse like a souffle in a thunderstorm, Zegler was venting to close friends that Dinklage's critique kicked off a domino effect. One that rewrote the script, changed the vibe, and left her stuck delivering lines in a movie that couldn't decide if it was a fairy tale, a college diversity seminar, or a deleted scene from Game of Thrones, Veggie Edition. Now, did she really blame him? We don't know. Nobody's going on record. But when has that ever stopped the internet? People grabbed onto that rumor like it was a lifeboat made of hot tea. Zegler blames Dinklage became the new favorite headline, meme, and Reddit debate all in one. And honestly, it kind of made sense. I mean, here's a rising young star who's suddenly the face of a movie that's getting roasted harder than Disney's turkey legs. Of course she's frustrated. Of course she's looking for answers. And if Peter Dinklage, an actor with a huge platform, says something that causes the studio to rewrite the entire premise, yeah, she might not be sending him a fruit basket. But here's the twist. Blaming Dinklage was a little too convenient. Because let's be real, this wasn't just about dwarves. The movie had pacing issues, tone problems, and about as much narrative clarity as a toddler telling a dream. Even without Dinklage's comments, this thing was already teetering. Still, the rumor stuck. And suddenly, it wasn't just about Snow White anymore. It was Zegler versus Dinklage in a battle no one asked for, and everyone was watching. One side said she was scapegoating. The other said she had every right to be annoyed. Meanwhile, Dinklage? Silent. Which only made people more suspicious, because when a celebrity doesn't respond, we all assume they're guilty of something, anything, everything. So now we've got two actors, a ruined remake, and a fan base split like a banana at a drama buffet. And somehow, this still wasn't the end of it. At this point, Disney wasn't just in hot water, they were in a full-blown jacuzzi of regret. The controversy had ballooned, the movie was testing like expired yogurt, and now, the public narrative had morphed into Snow White and the 7 PR disasters. And let me tell you, no amount of Disney magic was fixing this mess. Suddenly, every move the studio made looked like damage control. The trailers were edited to hide anything remotely controversial. Interviews were scrubbed cleaner than Cinderella's fireplace. The marketing team was working overtime trying to spin this movie as empowering and modern, while silently screaming into their spreadsheets. Meanwhile, fans were already sharpening their Rotten Tomatoes reviews. Even die-hard Disney defenders were like, okay, but why does Snow White talk like she just walked off a TED Talk stage? Critics pounced, calling the film everything from awkwardly overcorrected to a cinematic identity crisis. Which, honestly, might be the nicest thing anyone said. Behind closed doors, insiders claimed Disney execs were this close to pulling the movie entirely and pretending it was just a weird fever dream we all had in 2023. There were whispers of a full reboot. New director, new cast, possibly a version where Snow White's just Jenna Ortega throwing apples at billionaires. Honestly, I'd watch that. And let's not forget the financial fallout. We're talking $250 million poured into a movie that couldn't decide if it wanted to be a childhood classic or a think piece about mythical creature rights. Box office predictions plummeted faster than Dopey off a ladder. By opening weekend, the best-case scenario was maybe we don't lose a catastrophic amount of money. Meanwhile, every time Rachel Zegler so much as blinked on social media, people were analyzing it like the Zapruder film. Did she shade Dinklage in that emoji? Was that Instagram post a veiled reference to the rewrite? We were one tweet away from full-blown conspiracy theory mode. And Peter Dinklage? Still not talking. Just living his life, doing press for some other project. Probably sipping a cappuccino while the internet melted down around him. Iconic, honestly. So now Disney's left holding a half-baked fairy tale. a fractured fan base, and a rumor mill spinning so fast it could power Epcot. And we haven't even gotten to the ending yet. By the time Snow White stumbled into theaters, the damage had already been done. The press was brutal, the audience reviews were lukewarm at best, and even the popcorn was giving side-eye. You know it's bad when people start comparing your remake to Cats, and not even as a joke. Disney tried to play it cool, like, oh well, on to the next live-action classic. But the internet wasn't buying it. They knew this wasn't just a flop, it was a cautionary tale. The kind film students will study under a PowerPoint titled, How Not to Remake a Beloved Childhood Classic. Seriously, if there were a Mount Rushmore of overcorrected studio disasters, this thing would be front and center, right next to Morbius and Jared Leto's career decisions. But the drama didn't stop there. Nope. As soon as the box office numbers started looking like a failed GoFundMe, rumors started swirling that Disney was already planning a second Snow White remake. Like, okay, that one didn't count. Here's the real one this time. Pinky swear. Word on the street was they wanted a totally new director, a clean script, and possibly Jenna Ortega in the lead, which honestly would slap if they don't screw it up again. And that lingering Zegler versus Dinklage narrative, still kicking. People kept whispering that Zegler blamed him, even though no one could confirm it. It was like the Bigfoot of celebrity gossip, blurry, unconfirmed, and yet somehow completely believable. The crazy part? If Dinklage did set off the creative panic, it wasn't from malice. It was from wanting better representation, something he's been vocal about for years. The problem is Hollywood doesn't do subtle. They don't adjust. They overreact like they just walked in on the fairy godmother cheating on them. They didn't rethink the story. They hit it with a sledgehammer and hoped it would still sparkle. And Zegler? She became the poster child for a film that was already burning before she even showed up on set. Every time she opened her mouth, someone somewhere was dissecting her tone like it was a Zapruder film with contour. Whether or not she blamed Dinklage, she was definitely stuck holding the poisoned apple while everyone else sprinted out of frame. At this point, the phrase Snow White disaster has taken on a life of its own. It's no longer about the movie, it's a metaphor for overcorrection, for internet outrage, for studio execs saying, trust the process while setting fire to the process. It's everything wrong with trying to modernize a story without understanding what made it magical in the first place. So here we are, 100 headlines, 3 script rewrites, and 1 magical CGI train wreck later, and Snow White 2.0 has officially earned its place in the Hollywood Hall of Oops. And all it took was a global controversy, a PR meltdown, and a movie so tonally confused it should come with a therapist. What started as a simple remake turned into a case study in how not to juggle inclusivity, legacy, and a billion-dollar brand name. Disney wanted to modernize a classic, but instead they Frankensteined it into something that pleased no one and confused everyone. And in the middle of it all, Rachel Zegler and Peter Dinklage became the unofficial mascots of Creative Differences the musical. Whether Zegler actually blamed Dinklage or not almost doesn't matter anymore. The idea alone took off like a rumor-fueled rocket ship. And let's be honest, when a story about a princess and 7 forest dudes turns into a symbolic war over progressivism, representation, and studio panic, yeah, the fairy tale's dead, and the think piece lives on. Disney, for their part, will survive. They always do. They'll just slap a musical number on it, call it a reimagining, and cash in somewhere else. But the Snow White disaster? That one's gonna hang around like glitter in a carpet. No one knows exactly who to blame. Dinklage, Zegler, the exec who greenlit the mystical forest goblins. But the internet has made up its mind. Everyone's a little guilty, and nobody's getting out of this forest clean. So what's the moral of the story? Easy. If you're gonna rewrite a fairy tale, maybe don't do it mid-shoot, mid-scandal, and mid-existential crisis. And if you are going to cast a princess and change the lore, maybe, just maybe, have a plan that extends past the press release. Because in the end, Snow White didn't need a prince, but she sure could have used a coherent script. If this video made you question Hollywood's sanity, or just made you laugh at the dumpster fire, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We break down messy productions, studio meltdowns, and celebrity side-eyes like it's our full-time job, because it kind of is. And if Disney tries to remake Bambi with a vegan deer voiced by Timothée Chalamet, you'll want to be here when we cover that disaster too.